You are on furious HOA Karens. I stayed calm and let her talk. I am standing in my driveway at 7 in the morning when a middle-aged woman in a black parka steps over a snowbank and shoves an envelope against my chest. You are in violation of Section 12-4, she snaps. Your bins were visible from the street for 18 hours. That is a $200 fine, and if you argue with me right now, I will make it $400. My name is not important. What matters is I work as an electric utility lineman in Tacoma, Washington, and I moved into Rosewood Winter Walk HOA Incorporated 2 years ago, because the commute to the substation is 20 minutes and the neighborhood looked quiet. I was saving for something important, a down payment on a small commercial property my brother and I want to turn into a workshop, and every dollar mattered. The HOA seemed fine at first. Standard rules, boring meetings, the usual homeowner stuff. Then winter hit, and everything changed. The woman in front of me is Amy Martinez, but everyone calls her Brenda. She is the self-appointed compliance officer, a role that does not officially exist in our bylaws, but somehow grants her the authority to patrol the neighborhood with a clipboard, a phone with a cracked screen she uses to film every shoveled inch, and a collection of orange cones she keeps moving around like she is directing traffic at a disaster site. She has brown hair pulled into a bun, a pink knit hat, and an expression that makes it clear she enjoys this. Your trash bins were not delayed by snow, Brenda says. You left them out on purpose to test the rules. I have documentation. She taps her cracked phone screen. I have timestamps. I have photos. This conversation is not a debate, it is a directive. I look down at the envelope. Inside is a notice printed on HOA letterhead with no readable text visible, just blocks of highlighted paragraphs and a dollar amount circled in red. My trash pickup was delayed because the plow buried the curb and the truck could not get close enough. I brought the bins in as soon as I got home from a 14-hour emergency call-out in the freezing rain. I tell her this calmly. She smiles. That is not my problem. The rule is clear. Bins must be removed within 4 hours of pickup. You exceeded that by 14 hours. She pulls out her phone and starts recording. I am documenting your refusal to comply. I am not refusing anything, I say. I am explaining what happened. Excuses are not compliance, she snaps. I can put you on the agenda and keep you there. She turns and walks back toward the street, stepping over the same snowbank, her orange cones left in a crooked line along the curb like a crime scene marker. I watch her go. I do not yell. I do not argue. I stopped arguing and started collecting, because the endgame was already set. That was 3 days ago. Since then, Brenda has escalated. She left another notice on my door claiming my driveway had ice buildup that posed a liability risk. She threatened an amenities lockout, delivered like a power trip, saying I would lose pool access, clubhouse access, and guest parking until I paid the fines and signed a compliance agreement. The pool is closed for winter. The clubhouse is being renovated. The guest parking is a joke because we barely have guests. But the threat was real, and it was designed to humiliate. I called the management company. They told me Brenda does not have the authority to issue lockouts, but the board can ratify her actions retroactively if they choose to. That is when I realized the HOA was not just tolerating Brenda. They were using her as a weapon. I work weird hours. My job is emergency call-outs, which means I leave at 2 in the morning sometimes and come home covered in ice and mud after climbing poles in storms. I do not have time to play games with someone who thinks moving orange cones around is a legitimate enforcement strategy. But I also do not have the money to waste on bogus fines, and I have a family event this weekend, my nephew's birthday party, and the HOA is trying to sabotage parking and access by threatening to tow any vehicle that blocks the so-called snow routes, which apparently now include the guest lot. So I started documenting everything. I bought a dash cam for my truck. I set up a simple doorbell camera. I started saving every email, every notice, every text message in the neighborhood group chat. And I reached out to an ally, a local attorney I know through family who gives me a realistic plan. Her name is Claire, and she told me the same thing I already suspected. The HOA is violating open meeting rules, and it is going to backfire the moment I cite the statute. Claire is not my lawyer yet. She is just a friend who knows the game. She told me to keep my head down, keep collecting evidence, and wait for the right moment. That moment is coming fast. This morning, Brenda showed up again. This time she had a clipboard, a tape measure, and a city code book that looked like she printed it off the internet. She measured the distance from my front door to the edge of my driveway, then measured the height of the snow pile the plow left against my mailbox. She took photos. She made notes. She did not speak to me. She just worked, methodically, like she was building a case for a trial. I watched from the window. I did not go outside. I did not give her the satisfaction. But I did film her, and I made sure the timestamp was visible. An hour later, I got a text in the neighborhood group chat. It was from Brenda. She posted a photo of my driveway with a caption that said, "Another violation logged. Snow storage in non-approved area. This is what happens when people think rules do not apply to them." The group chat exploded. Someone asked what non-approved area meant. Someone else said the plow put that snow there, not me. Brenda replied immediately. The responsibility for snow removal is on the homeowner. If you cannot manage your property, you should not own property. That last line was the match. The chat turned into a fire. People started posting their own photos of snow piles, asking if they were also in violation. Someone posted a picture of Brenda's driveway, which had a snowbank twice the size of mine. Brenda did not respond to that one. She just left the chat. But she did not stop. That afternoon, I got a certified letter. Inside was a notice of a surprise hearing scheduled for tomorrow night. The letter said I was required to appear before the board to address multiple winter compliance violations. It listed 4 separate charges, all related to snow and ice. Each one carried a fine. The total was $800. I read the letter twice. Then I called Claire. She told me the hearing notice was improper because it did not give me adequate time to prepare, and the charges were vague enough to be unenforceable. But she also told me to go to the hearing, because skipping it would let them claim I admitted guilt by default. So I am going, and I am bringing everything. That night, I went through everything I had collected. Video of Brenda placing a notice on my door herself after claiming she never came by. Screenshots of the group chat where she contradicted herself 3 times about what the snow storage rule actually said. Photos of her own driveway with the massive snowbank she never addressed. A printed copy of the open meeting statute Claire gave me, highlighted in yellow. And the trump card, a time-stamped timeline packet that makes their story mathematically impossible, showing that Brenda claimed to have issued a warning at a time when the gate access logs prove she was not even in the neighborhood. I did not plan to use the timeline right away. I was holding it back, waiting for the right moment. Claire told me the board would try to steamroll me, and the best defense was to let them overcommit before I showed my hand. So I put the timeline in a folder, sealed it, and put it in my truck. The next morning I woke up to find an HOA vendor standing in my front yard with a clipboard. He was wearing a reflective vest and holding a camera. He did not knock. He just walked up to my porch, took photos of my door, my windows, my driveway, and my mailbox, then started writing notes. I opened the door. "Can I help you?" He looked up. "I am doing a property assessment for the HOA. I did not authorize an assessment, and you are on my property without permission." He shrugged. "I was told this is part of the winter compliance review. If you have a problem, take it up with the board." I pulled out my phone and started filming. "I am asking you to leave. You do not have permission to be here." He stared at me for a second, then turned and walked back to his truck. I got his license plate, I got his company name off the door. And I got video of the whole thing, which I immediately sent to Claire. She called me back 5 minutes later. That is trespassing, and if the HOA authorized it without notice, that is harassment. Bring that video to the hearing tonight. Do not let them bury it. I was not planning to let them bury anything. The hearing was scheduled for 7. I showed up at 6:45. The meeting room was in the clubhouse, which smelled like wet carpet and old coffee. There were 6 board members sitting at a folding table. Brenda was sitting off to the side with her clipboard and her phone. She smiled when I walked in. The board president, a man in his 60s with a gray beard, started the meeting without preamble. We are here to address multiple violations by the homeowner at Unit 42. He did not use my name. He just called me the homeowner, like I was a problem to be solved instead of a person. He read the charges: snow storage in non-approved area, failure to remove trash bins in a timely manner, ice hazard on driveway, refusal to cooperate with compliance review. Each charge came with a $200 fine. The total was $800, due immediately. I raised my hand. Can I respond to these charges? The president looked annoyed. You can submit a written response within 10 days. That is not what the bylaws say. The bylaws say I have the right to speak at any hearing that concerns my property. He frowned. We do not have time for a full hearing tonight. This is a summary proceeding. Then why did you call it a hearing? I pulled out the certified letter. This letter says I am required to appear before the board to address violations. It does not say I am only allowed to submit written responses later. It says I have the right to be heard. The room went quiet. One of the board members, a woman in her 50s, leaned forward. What exactly do you want to say? If you are enjoying this story, hit the like button and subscribe for more HOA nightmares. I want to present evidence that these charges are false. And I want to know why the board is allowing a compliance officer to issue fines without proper authorization. Brenda stood up. I have full authorization. The board ratified my position last month. I looked at her. Can I see the meeting minutes from that vote? She hesitated. They are not public yet. The open meeting law says all meeting minutes must be available within 10 days. That vote was 6 weeks ago. Where are the minutes? The president cleared his throat. We are working on finalizing them. So you ratified a position that does not exist in the bylaws, you did not record the vote properly, and now you are using that position to issue fines without oversight. I pulled out my phone. I have video evidence that contradicts every charge you just read. I have screenshots of Brenda contradicting herself in the group chat. I have photos of her own property in violation of the same rules she is trying to enforce against me. And I have proof that the vendor who trespassed on my property this morning was acting on HOA authorization without giving me notice. The room went silent. The board members looked at each other. Brenda sat down, her face red. The president shuffled his papers. We will take this under advisement. No. I stayed standing. You called this a hearing. I am presenting my defense. You do not get to table it because it is inconvenient. One of the board members, a younger man in a flannel shirt, spoke up. Let him talk. If he has evidence, we should see it. I pulled out my folder. I started with the group chat screenshots. I showed where Brenda claimed the snow storage rule prohibited any snow within 10 feet of the street, then later claimed it only applied to snow piles over 3 feet high, then later claimed it applied to any snow that was not removed within 24 hours. 3 different interpretations, all in the same week. Then I showed the photos of her driveway. Her snowbank was easily 5 feet high and ran the entire length of her property line. By her own rules, she was in violation. Then I played the video of the vendor trespassing on my property. The timestamp showed it was this morning, less than 12 hours ago. The vendor clearly stated he was doing a property assessment for the HOA. I showed the board the statute Claire gave me. Under Washington law, an HOA cannot authorize entry onto private property without notice and consent, except in emergencies. This was not an emergency. This was harassment. The president looked uncomfortable. We were not aware the vendor was going to do that. Then you have a vendor acting without proper authorization. That is a liability issue, and it is evidence that this compliance review process is out of control. Brenda stood up again. You are twisting everything. The rules are clear. You are in violation. This conversation is not a debate, it is a directive. I looked at her. You said that to me 3 days ago. You also said you have documentation and timestamps. Let me see them. She held up her phone. I have everything right here. Then show the board. Show them the timestamps that prove I left my trash bins out on purpose. Show them the photos that prove my driveway is an ice hazard. Show them the documentation that proves any of this is real. She hesitated. She looked at the board. She looked back at me. Then she said, I do not have to prove anything to you. The board has already reviewed my reports. The president nodded. That is correct. We have reviewed the reports and found them sufficient. I pulled out the second folder. This one I had kept sealed until now. I opened it slowly, making sure everyone could see. Inside was the timeline. A printed spreadsheet with every notice Brenda claimed to have issued, cross-referenced with the gate access logs I had obtained through a public records request. The logs showed every time a vehicle entered or exited the neighborhood, time-stamped to the second. On February 4th, I said, Brenda claimed she issued a verbal warning to me at 9:15 in the morning. She documented this in her compliance report, which the board has apparently reviewed and approved. But the gate access logs show that Brenda's vehicle did not enter the neighborhood until 10:42 that morning. She could not have issued a warning at 9:15 because she was not here. I laid the timeline on the table. The board members leaned forward. The president picked it up. He read it. His face went pale. There are 4 other discrepancies just like this one, I said. 4 times where Brenda claimed to have issued warnings or taken photos at times when the access logs prove she was not in the neighborhood. Either she is lying or someone else is issuing notices in her name. Either way, this entire process is fraudulent. Brenda's face went from red to white. She looked at the board. She looked at the timeline. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The younger board member spoke up. Where did you get the access logs? Public records request. The gate system is managed by a vendor under contract with the HOA. All access logs are public records under state law. I filed the request 2 weeks ago. I got the logs yesterday. The president put the timeline down. He looked at Brenda. Is this accurate? She did not answer. I brought a second copy for the HOA attorney, so the legal risk is obvious. I pulled out a sealed envelope with the attorney's name on it. I am also filing a formal complaint with the management company, requesting a management audit that exposes the pattern of improper enforcement and retaliation. If the board wants to continue this hearing, I am happy to keep going. But I think we all know where this is headed. The room was silent. Then the president stood up. We are going to take a recess. They took a 30-minute recess. I stayed in the meeting room. Brenda left immediately, walking fast, her orange cones forgotten on the chair. The board members went into a side office. I could hear raised voices through the door. Claire called. I told her what happened. She told me to stay calm, do not leave, and do not agree to anything without running it past her first. I told her I was not agreeing to anything. I was just waiting to see what they would do next. When they came back, the president looked tired. He sat down and read from a prepared statement. After reviewing the evidence presented tonight, the board has decided to suspend all pending fines and citations against Unit 42 pending further investigation. We will be conducting an internal review of our compliance procedures and will provide an update within 30 days. That is not good enough, I said. I want the fines voided, not suspended. I want a formal apology. And I want the board to address the vendor trespassing issue. The president looked at the other board members. They nodded. Fine. The fines are voided. We will send a letter of apology. And we will terminate our relationship with the vendor pending an investigation. I stood up. I also want the compliance officer position eliminated. It is not in the bylaws, it was ratified without proper procedure, and it has been used to harass homeowners. If the board wants to enforce rules, use the management company. That is what we pay them for. The president hesitated. Then he nodded. We will table the compliance officer position until we can review the bylaws and determine if it is appropriate. That was not a yes, but it was close enough. I picked up my folders. I walked out. Brenda was standing in the parking lot, leaning against her car, her phone in her hand. She looked up when I walked past. You think you won, she said. You did not win. I can make your life hell. I stopped. I turned around. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Say that again. She stared at me. Then she got in her car and drove away. The next morning I woke up to a voicemail from the management company. They wanted to schedule a meeting to discuss the compliance review process. I called them back and told them I would meet with them, but only if Claire could attend as my representative. They agreed. The meeting was 2 days later. It was at the management company's office, a bland corporate building with fake plants and motivational posters. The property manager, a woman named Jessica, sat across from me and Claire. She had a folder in front of her. She looked nervous. We have reviewed the timeline you provided, Jessica said. We also reviewed the gate access logs and cross-referenced them with the compliance reports submitted by Amy Martinez. There are significant discrepancies. I know, I said. That is why I am here. Jessica opened the folder. We have terminated our working relationship with Amy Martinez. She is no longer authorized to act on behalf of the HOA in any capacity. We have also voided all fines and citations issued under her authority. And we are implementing new procedures to ensure this does not happen again. What about the vendor? I asked. The vendor has been terminated. We are also reviewing all other vendor contracts to ensure they are operating within legal boundaries. Claire leaned forward. What about the open meeting violations? The board ratified a position that does not exist in the bylaws without proper notice or procedure. That is a violation of state law. Jessica nodded. We are aware. The board has agreed to hold a special meeting to address the issue. They will be voting to formally dissolve the compliance officer position and to adopt new policies that comply with the open meeting law. All homeowners will receive notice of the meeting, and it will be open to the public. When is the meeting? I asked. Next week. You will receive a formal notice in the mail. Claire and I stood up. Jessica handed me a letter. This is a formal apology from the board, along with documentation that all fines have been voided. If you have any other concerns, please let us know. I took the letter. I did not open it. I just nodded and walked out. That should have been the end of it. But Brenda was not done. 2 days later, I came home from a shift to find orange cones blocking my driveway. Not just a few. A full line of them, running from the street to my garage door, spaced evenly like a barricade. There was a note taped to one of the cones. It said, "Snow route enforcement in effect. Do not remove." I called the management company. They told me there was no snow route enforcement scheduled. They told me to remove the cones and document it. I took photos, then moved the cones to the side of the street. An hour later, they were back. This time, there was no note. just the cones, repositioned exactly where they had been before. I checked my doorbell camera. The footage showed Brenda walking up at 3 in the morning, placing the cones one by one, then walking away. She did not knock. She did not leave a notice. She just set up the barricade and left. I sent the footage to Jessica and Claire. Jessica called me back within an hour. This is harassment. We are filing a formal complaint with the board. If she does this again, we will pursue a restraining order. I told her to do whatever she needed to do. I was done playing games. The special board meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I showed up early. The meeting room was packed. At least 30 homeowners were there, more than I had ever seen at an HOA meeting. Word had spread. People were angry. The board president opened the meeting. He read a prepared statement acknowledging the compliance issues and announcing the dissolution of the compliance officer position. He apologized for the confusion and promised new oversight procedures. It was careful, corporate, and meaningless. Then he opened the floor for comments. The first person to speak was a man in his 40s who lived 3 streets over. He said Brenda had threatened to fine him for parking his truck in his own driveway because it was a commercial vehicle. He said she had taken photos of his house and posted them in the group chat with a caption calling him a code violator. He said she had harassed his wife when she was shoveling snow, claiming the snow was being piled in a non-approved area. The second person was a woman in her 30s. She said Brenda had threatened to report her to the city for having a trampoline in her backyard, even though trampolines were not mentioned in the HOA rules. She said Brenda had walked into her backyard without permission to take photos. The third person was an older man who said Brenda had tried to fine him for having Christmas lights up past January 15th, even though the rule only applied to decorations visible from the street, and his lights were in his backyard. One by one, people stood up and told their stories. Brenda had targeted at least 15 homeowners. She had issued fines that were not authorized. She had taken photos without permission. She had threatened people. She had moved orange cones around like she was directing traffic at a disaster site. And the board had let her do it. By the time the last person finished speaking, the board looked shell-shocked. The president tried to respond, but people started shouting over him. Someone demanded the board resign. Someone else demanded a recall election. Someone else demanded a full audit of HOA finances to see if Brenda had been paid for her so-called compliance work. The president banged a gavel. "We hear your concerns. We will be conducting a full review of all actions taken under the compliance officer role. Any fines or citations issued by Amy Martinez will be voided unless they can be independently verified by the management company. We will also be implementing new policies to prevent this from happening again." "That is not enough," someone yelled. "We want accountability. We want transparency. We want the board to explain how this was allowed to happen." The president looked at the other board members. They looked back at him. Then he said, "We will schedule a follow-up meeting in 30 days to provide a full report. In the meantime, if anyone has evidence of harassment or improper conduct, please submit it to the management company." The meeting ended badly. People were still yelling as they walked out. I stayed in my seat. Claire was next to me taking notes. She looked satisfied. "That went better than I expected," she said. "Better?" "That was chaos." "Exactly. Chaos means the board cannot ignore it anymore. They are going to have to act, or they are going to face a recall." The next day, I got a call from a number I did not recognize. I answered. It was the gate technician, a guy named Marcus who I had seen around the neighborhood doing maintenance on the access system. He said he heard what happened at the meeting. He said he had something I needed to see. We met at the front gate. Marcus had a laptop and a tool bag. He pulled up the gate access logs on his screen. "See this?" he said, pointing to a line of entries. "This is Amy Martinez's vehicle. She entered the neighborhood 16 times in the last month outside of normal hours." Most of these entries are between 2 and 4 in the morning. Why would she be coming in at 2 in the morning? I asked. I do not know. But look at this. He scrolled down. On 3 of those entries there were maintenance alerts triggered. Someone was tampering with the gate system. Tampering how? Someone was trying to delete access logs. The system flagged it as a security event, but no one followed up. Can you prove it was her? Not directly. But the tampering attempts happened within minutes of her vehicle entering, and the logs that were targeted for deletion were all from times when she claimed to have issued warnings or taken photos. I stared at the screen. So she was not just lying about when she was here. She was trying to cover her tracks by deleting the logs. Marcus nodded. I reported it to the management company this morning. They are launching a full investigation. The investigation took 2 weeks. During that time, the neighborhood was quiet. Brenda did not show up. The orange cones disappeared. The group chat went silent. It felt like everyone was holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Then I got a letter from the HOA attorney. Inside was a formal notice that the board had voted to pursue legal action against Amy Martinez for fraud, harassment, and tampering with HOA records. The letter also stated that a management audit had exposed a pattern of improper enforcement and retaliation, and that the board was implementing new oversight procedures to prevent future abuse. The same day, I got a second letter. This one was from the court. Brenda had filed a defamation lawsuit against me, claiming I had damaged her reputation by presenting false evidence at the board meeting. I called Claire. She read the lawsuit and laughed. This is not going anywhere. Everything you presented was documented and verifiable. She is just trying to intimidate you. Can she do that? She can try, but it is going to backfire. If she pursues this, we can countersue for harassment and abuse of process, and we can use the gate access logs and the tampering investigation as evidence. So what do I do? Nothing. Let her waste her money on a lawyer. We will respond when we need to. 3 weeks later, I got a call from Claire. The lawsuit is dismissed. Brenda's attorney withdrew it after reviewing the evidence. Apparently, once he saw the gate access logs and the timeline, he advised her to drop it. What about the criminal charges? The management company filed a complaint with the police. They are investigating, but it is a low-priority case. It is possible she will face charges for tampering with the gate system, but that could take months. And the board? The board is voting next week on whether to pursue a civil lawsuit to recover damages. If they do, it is going to get ugly. Good, I said. Let it get ugly. The following week, I got a notice that the board had voted unanimously to file a lawsuit against Amy Martinez. The lawsuit sought damages for the cost of the management audit, the cost of the legal fees, and the cost of refunding all the fines she had improperly issued. The total was over $15,000. 2 days later, Brenda showed up at my door. She looked different, smaller, somehow. Tired. She did not have her clipboard. She did not have her phone. She did not have her orange cones. I just wanted to say I am sorry, she said. I made mistakes. I got carried away. I thought I was helping the neighborhood. I stood in the doorway. I did not invite her in. You were not helping. You were targeting people. You were lying. You were tampering with records. And you filed a lawsuit against me to cover it up. She looked down. I know. I was wrong. I just want to move on. Then move on. But do not come back here. And do not contact me again. She nodded. She turned and walked away. I watched her go. I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No anger. Just tired. A week later, I got the final notice. The court had granted an injunction that stopped all towing and winter enforcement immediately and ordered the HOA to void the lien threats. The judge ruled that the HOA's winter enforcement policies were vague, inconsistently applied, and violated state law. The board was ordered to rewrite the policies and submit them for review within 60 days. The management audit confirmed what I already knew. Brenda had issued over 40 improper fines in the last 6 months. She had targeted at least 20 homeowners. She had tampered with the gate access logs on 3 separate occasions. And the board had ratified her actions without proper oversight, in violation of the open meeting law. The consequences were immediate. The minutes recorded the reversal and the reason. Karen received a written warning for harassment behavior. 2 board members resigned. The management company implemented new training requirements for all board members. And Brenda was permanently banned from serving in any HOA leadership role. The funny karma moment came 2 weeks later. I was driving through the neighborhood when I saw a tow truck parked in front of Brenda's house. Her car was being hooked up. I slowed down. A man in a reflective vest was standing next to the truck, holding a clipboard. Brenda was on her porch, yelling at him. I rolled down my window. "What is going on?" The man looked at me. "HOA called us. Said this vehicle is parked in a non-approved area." "What non-approved area?" He shrugged. "I just do what they tell me." I pulled over. I got out. I walked up to Brenda's porch. She was holding her phone. The same cracked screen, filming everything. "You," she said, pointing at me. "You did this." "I did not do anything. I do not even know why your car is being towed." She says nobody complains. Then someone pulled out a stack of complaints, all filed in the last week. All of them about her car being parked in a spot that technically violated the guest parking rules, the same rules she had used to threaten other people. The tow truck driver hooked up her car and drove away. Brenda stood on her porch, still filming, still yelling. I got back in my truck and drove home. The final showdown happened 3 days later. I was pulling into the neighborhood when I saw the gate vendor van parked at the entrance. Marcus was standing next to it with his tool bag. Brenda was standing in front of him, blocking his way, her orange cones arranged in a line behind her like a barricade. She was yelling at him, demanding to see the access logs, demanding to know who had authorized the investigation. Marcus saw me and waved. I parked and walked over. Brenda turned. You are the reason this is happening. You ruined everything." "I did not ruin anything. You did this to yourself." She stepped closer. "I can make your life hell. I told you that. This conversation is not a debate, it is a directive." Marcus cleared his throat. "Actually, Amy, this conversation is over. I have the access logs right here." He held up a printed packet. "These logs show every time you entered the neighborhood, every time you triggered a maintenance alert, and every time you attempted to delete records. The management company has already filed a police report, and the HOA attorney is reviewing this for potential criminal charges." Brenda's face went white. She looked at the packet. She looked at Marcus. She looked at me. Then she screamed. A full-throated, open-mouthed scream that echoed across the parking lot. Marcus did not flinch. He just stood there, holding the packet, waiting for her to finish. When she finally stopped, he handed her a copy of the access logs. "You are banned from the gate system effective immediately. If you enter the neighborhood without authorization, it will be considered trespassing. Have a nice day." He got in his van and drove away. Brenda stood there holding the packet, her orange cones scattered around her like wreckage. I walked past her without a word. She did not say anything. She just stood there, frozen, as freezing fog rolled in and made everything look haunted. I never saw her at another HOA meeting. I heard she moved out a few months later. The board rewrote the winter policies, hired a professional compliance company, and started holding open meetings that actually followed the law. The neighborhood got quieter. People stopped fighting in the group chat. The orange cones disappeared. I kept the timeline packet in a folder in my truck, just in case. But I never needed it again. The game was over. The end game had been set from the start. I just had to wait for them to overcommit. And they did. Thanks for watching, and I appreciate you being here.